Hey guys, welcome back to the Gut Girls podcast. Today is going to be probably one of my favorite podcasts and probably one of Diana's hardest podcasts. But we are diving into, let's call this, the store that changed lives. We're diving into Diana's, let's say, testimony, her story, and her future. And if you guys know nothing about Diana, we're going to talk about her store, Nature's Elite, that has closed after 8 years. And so if you've never heard of that store, you're going to want to listen to this podcast and hear, I think, more than Diana's original gut transformation story. Like this is like almost like chapter 2 of Diana's life. Because if you go back to episode 1, you heard a lot about how her and I met, what started Diana off in this gut health journey, how she, came to open Nature's Elite. And so now we're talking about Nature's Elite recently having to close after 8 years. And so many people have reached out to her with questions and they want to know why, what happened. And even, we're going to talk about why Nature's Elite was more than just a store for her. And so today we're sharing all of that. And I just told her before we hit record, I said, Diana, I'm so proud of you for sharing this testimony because I think it's going to speak to the heart of so many people. And so, Diana, before we talk about Nature's Elite, I think we need people to understand who you were before any of this started, because quite frankly, some people might not have listened to episode 1. And so they're hearing us for the first time. And so Diana, we want to know more like who you were before Nature's Elite and, tell us, I guess I'd start with tell us about your life before Nature's Elite. Let's just start there.
All right. Well, this is almost, I feel like you're hosting me this time. Like I'm a guest on my own podcast. So I feel like I don't even have the right words, but, so after I graduated from UT Knoxville and met my husband, and my husband and I got married, I started in the investment business, which is a family business. I worked as a financial advisor for 12 years, and it was a very stressful job. But rewarding and educational. Man, I learned so much during that time. But during that time, I lost my mom. And again, you can go back and listen to episode 1 and 2, the very beginning of the podcast, where you can kind of hear my whole entire story. But I lost my mom and I was in the middle of an infertility journey. Then finally got pregnant 6 weeks after my mom passed away, had 2 daughters back to back, 17 months apart. And after that, I started experiencing kind of a whole slew of unexplained symptoms. That's what I call it. And I was Googling, I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And even some of my coworkers in the investment business, like we had diagnosed me with lupus and so I was hopping from doctor to doctor. So my life was very stressful. I didn't have a mom to lean on to help me with my kids. So my husband worked all the time. So I was juggling a lot during that time. So that was kind of what my life looked like going into opening Nature's Elite.
So, okay, for those of you that are listening, and I'm gonna, like I said, I'm kind of interviewing, so it does feel kind of awkward, because usually we're just talking about gut health and having a conversation. But I can't help but ask, if I'm hearing this for the first time, were you successful in the investment business, like career-wise? Would you say you were successful in that business?
I think so. I don't know that that was something that I was ever just super passionate about. I almost look at it like it was just a stepping stone for what God really had for my life. And again, running a business and, learning all of that gave me such a great background to have this business sense. I mean, you and I kind of laugh about the fact that I do have that business sense, not just budgeting, but, really understanding the financials behind that. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute, because that also played a role in my decision for shutting down Nature's Elite.
Mm-hmm. And Diana is she's amazing when it comes to logistics and running a business. Let me tell you that. I know that from firsthand experience. So then you mentioned, okay, that was prior to Nature's Elite. So you left the investment world, but I can't help but ask, like, were you scared about leaving the investment world and opening up, like starting from scratch, right? That's essentially what you did.
I did. it was terrifying because I left something that was safe, that I understood, that I knew was going to be there, to honestly just share my story. I feel like that's really the part that I finally got to do what God was kind of calling me to do. Looking back, I felt like a little lost after college and my mom passing away, and it wasn't super purposeful for me. And then once God was like, hey, I'm going to open these doors for you. And he did that in a manner that he allowed me to be able to share my story, my transformation story about gut health and the education that I had, began to understand about probiotics, about collagen, about bone broth, all of those things. I wanted to be able to share that. But then there was a separate side of it too, that in 2018, that's when the federal bill for the hemp laws changed. And so it became federally legal to buy and sell hemp, which is the cousin plant to the marijuana plant. And it began changing lives. And I started hearing those stories. So I was like, man, I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to become an expert at CBD, which again is cannabidiol that comes from the hemp plant. And I wanted to educate my community and provide opportunity for them to have good quality products and take those kind of things, and then be able to share my story in gut health at the same time. And so I was like, okay, maybe if I pull all of this together, then I can really have this wellness store. And thankfully, I've lived in Tullahoma other than just a few years that after Todd and I were married. And when I was in college in Knoxville, other than that, I've pretty much lived in Tullahoma my entire life. So I know a lot of people. My mom taught a lot of people. My dad knows a lot. My family's in sports, and, we just active in the community. And so, I thought maybe if I spread the word, I start a little blog, I start a little Instagram account, and people started following and asking questions. And so I was like, okay, maybe this will work. I can do this. So I opened my doors in November of 2018. So when you say 8 years, it was roughly 7.5 years, something like that.
Okay. And so I can't help but wonder too. So when you left the investment business, was it with the goal, like the goal was I'm opening a wellness store, or was there a gap of time in between there where you were like, I can't handle the investment business anymore just because of my illnesses, all the symptoms you were having, and so I know I need to stop, and you didn't know the next step? Or did you have that transition? Like, you knew you were going to open the store?
Yeah, I knew that I was going to open this store. I went directly from one to the other, because again, it was something that felt so special and purposeful. And while it was terrifying doing something brand new, and I still remember my very first customer at Nature's Elite, because I was like, I've never worked in retail. I was a lifeguard and I had lots of jobs, but I never really worked retail. So checking somebody out and understanding that. And so that was terrifying going into that. And literally having to try to encourage people to come shop at the store and learn what that was about, trying to do marketing and, those kind of things. So, but because it felt purposeful, it never felt super forced.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully I never had to go through some major marketing or, anything like that. A lot of it was just doing things like this, sharing my story on social media and referral based.
And did you use CBD early in your in your health journey? Was that something that was like successful for you that you were able to share with others?
It was. I had a noticeable difference right before I opened the store, when I started taking it pretty regularly, which was about 6 months or so after I started working with you. And of course, obviously, I had the most transformation doing the gut healing journey, because that was real. We know that I had a parasite, and my gut was in disarray. And so but then I still hadn't really done a great job understanding the nervous system side. And when I took the CBD, it was an automatic difference in how I didn't understand that it was my nervous system at the time. I just said anxiety, I don't love using that word because it kind of is tossed around a lot, but it was anxiousness that I was feeling. I was kind of always uptight. We've talked on this before that, I caught myself getting ice out of the refrigerator and like my shoulders was just always constantly just up and tight and tense. And so that's the kind of thing that I felt like CBD did for me. It allowed me that relaxing feeling that I was really striving for. So I used it. And then my dad also has had trouble sleeping for many years, and he was able to get sleep using CBD. And so we're like, this light bulb's going off, and we're like, man, his pain's feeling better. He's sleeping. I'm feeling better, not feeling quite as anxious and able to rest better at night. And so that's when I kind of pulled that part together and then pulled the other side and was like, all right, we'll make a store out of it.
That is so awesome. I love the ambition that was there, and the desire, like the purpose of like, let's share this with others. And so when you first opened Nature's Elite, I'm just curious, because I don't know that I've even asked this question to you ever, but like, what was that original vision? Like, what did you think when you opened it? What was it going to be like?
I don't know that I had a super clear plan. It was that I wanted to share my story. I remember thinking that I wanted to provide products that were better quality. At this time, I was starting to understand the difference between, I didn't really know what vitamins and supplements and all of that stuff was good for me. I knew what you had shared with me and what products you had suggested that I take. And so I started kind of researching the difference in a drugstore vitamin D versus, a Designs for Health or Thorne or, one of those better quality. I started kind of understanding and researching the difference in those ingredients. And so I wanted to share that. So when people came into the store, I wanted to be able to, kindly suggest that they really look at the back of their bottle. And so that's when I started. And so then, I think their mind began to open and expand into, okay, well, let me really start to understand what this is that I'm taking from the drugstore, and can my body recognize it? So that's really kind of what my goal was, is to just share and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that, because you're speaking to people about taking a risk and not always having the plan laid out, right? Like it was just, I'm going to start here and we're going to see what happens. So when we talk about seeing what happens, was there what shocked you within that first year of having this storefront? Like what did you not expect and what happened?
The stories, the customer stories that came back. And that's when I was like, okay, we've got something. They notice a quick difference. And whether that was with taking a probiotic or whether it was, where they're like, man, I'm just going to say it. They're like, I haven't pooped in 10 years, whatever, 10 days, 10 years. Like I haven't pooped regularly. And so then they would just take this probiotic and they're like, oh my gosh, my stomach feels so much better. I'm so much less bloated, and the collagen stories, taking that, there are multiple people that were going to have knee replacement, and they started taking, I started explaining to them a little bit about what collagen is, and even like a little bit of collagen loading, taking 2 or 3 scoops in a day. And some of those people would walk back in and be like, I'm not getting my knee replaced anymore. And I'm like, holy smoke. So there's really something to this.
So it sounds like it wasn't just like people are coming in and buying products anymore. You're seeing transformation. And I'm curious then to know, with these transformations typically comes relationships and community. So how long did people actually stay in your store over time?
Oh man, there were, some people would come and stay for hours in the store. I purposefully had a couch there and made it comfortable and felt homey so that they could really just for me to listen honestly, they just wanted somebody, and this is not a knock at all physicians and doctors, but sometimes they don't have the time to just listen. And so I was just listening to their story. And then that's when I started kind of connecting the dots for them. Like, they would share their story and I would start to understand, based on other customers, based on my own story, based on some of the research that I had done, some of the training that I was in the process of getting. And I started connecting those dots for those people with the symptoms and experiences and everything, and then pull it all together a little bit. And so we would sometimes sit for hours. I did that when I had the time. I could sit for a really long time, and I enjoyed that. Man, that was such a special part of the whole Nature's Elite journey that I went on.
Well, so it sounds like it became way more than a store for you. It became like like I would even, as I'm listening to you, what I am like hearing in my own head is, Diana, you basically woke Tullahoma up, and you you brought forth not just products, but like a community that they were craving. Like, it was more than just a storefront. It was a community. It was purpose. It was socialization. I mean, and if I'm going to ask you in all honesty, like, don't you think that's one of the biggest parts of healing?
Oh, man, the community and the support, and those around you, knowing that other people are going through similar situations. Yes. I mean, that is exactly. And of course, I mean, spoiler alert, that's what we've built here in Gut Girls too, is the community. I realized that I craved that part of it. And I think that's why people came to me, because they knew that I understood. Like, I may not have had obviously I didn't have the exact same story as them. I didn't necessarily have the same symptoms, but they realized that I had been through something really difficult and come out on the other side, and didn't take, I chose not to take an antibiotic for the parasite. I chose to do things in a more holistic way. And they appreciated that, and they were curious, they wanted to understand that, and so that was a kind of a cool part of what Nature's Elite became. And so, yeah, the community and the support, and I that's what I felt purposeful about. I felt like I could be a listener, if nothing else.
Yeah, it sounds like you use that as, less of becoming like an authority figure over them, but like, I'm here to walk with you through it. And I think that's so powerful in healing. So that's amazing. And then what comes to my mind is, you had told me, I mean, I've heard several stories from out of Nature's Elite from you. And one that stood out though was Colt's story. And so do you want to speak up on that for everyone listening?
Yeah. And I do have permission to use Colt's name and even his mom's name, which her name is Chelsea. This was several years into my journey at Nature's Elite, really probably 5 years into my journey. This just happened probably in the last 2 or 3 years. But she came to me with curiosity about what she could maybe do for her young son. He was probably about 7-ish or so at the time, and having a lot of trouble focusing, a lot of trouble at school and at home. Simple behavior things, I believe. I don't want to say anything that isn't true, but just some noticeable things that were happening at school. And she had taken him to the doctor. They had suggested that there would be medication involved, and I can't remember exactly how she came to me, but I think it was a referral. Somebody was like, you need to go talk to Diana and see what she would maybe suggest. And of course, I always told people, I'm not a doctor, but I will tell you exactly what I would do for my own child in this situation. And I also reassured them that I would never suggest anything that I would not do for myself, that I would not do for my 2 children also. And so with Colt, I suggested with twofold. One is I suggested that we do some foundational work. We worked on nutrition. I started teaching her a little bit about the ingredients in food. We talked about red dyes, and now that just in the last year or so, I feel like that's really become more well known, that people talk about dyes and what that can do for behavioral problems. But so this was, 2 years or so. So it wasn't quite, people weren't talking about quite as much. So I was helping her understand that. I also kind of taught her about gluten. I taught her about some of the inflammatory responses that can happen with certain types of foods and things. And so he, best I remember, he had also had maybe recurrent strep or something like that. And so again, kind of connecting the dots, I'm like, we probably, a probiotic, you and I, Angela, and this is something that I've learned over the years, a lot of times with those more anxious kids, a lot of times that's depleted commensal bacteria or good bacteria. And so we're like, most all kids need a little bit of support, because at where we are in this day and age, a lot of times antibiotics are given frequently. And so we're depleted of the good bacteria. So I'm like, okay, let's do a probiotic. Let's start looking at these ingredients in your food. Let's do some simple swaps. I gave her a swap list. Let's do some simple swaps. And then I would do CBD. And so, and a lot of times, and I hesitate saying that, which is crazy because of what I know about it, the stories and everything, but people are like, oh, CBD. And again, not to knock physicians, but my goodness, people just like jump into taking any medication without really understanding what's behind it. And let me tell you about CBD, guys. It comes from the hemp plant. I mean, it doesn't get much more natural than doing that. Now, sure, to put it in a gummy form, you have to add a little bit of stuff or whatever to make it into a gummy form, but it is a natural plant. So why are we so scared of that? And this mom was not. Chelsea was not. And so she took everything I suggested. Again, the only two things technically that were added were the CBD and the probiotic. And she just started changing his diet and everything. And my goodness, the progress that he made, here in Tennessee, they have to pass like the TCAP test and to be able to go from third grade to fourth grade. I don't know, guys. My kids are way past that, and that wasn't a thing then. But it is a really, or else they have to stay in third grade if they don't pass this test now. And Tennessee just passed this not too long ago, and so the mom was concerned about that. The mom was concerned about behavior, everything. And I mean, he did a 180 as far as like his mood, his focus, his schoolwork. I mean, everything. I mean, I think they were even noticing it on the baseball field, the difference in his focus. And so CBD is consistently a part of his day. And obviously she's still doing all the foundational work as well, but that had really, I believe, calmed his nervous system down so much that he was able to function, and he couldn't explain that to his mom how he was feeling. And so CBD did that kind of a thing to this 7-8-year-old boy. And my goodness, I mean, I have thousands of stories like that.
So many things come to my mind. First, I'm like, from the mom's perspective, I have goosebumps for her, because the stress she was probably feeling in school and like how that affected her family and her own parenting, right? Like, how do you parent someone that doesn't even know how to explain what they're feeling? So for you to be able to intervene there and give her like support, I'm sure she is just elated with that, which is why she probably gave you permission, like, share away, because it was just, that sounds transformational. But then I think it's so interesting, because think of us as adults, like, we don't know how to talk about our nervous system. You and I coach people every day and they're like, what's the nervous system? So imagine that 6, or what you said, 7-ish-year-old, like, they have no idea. So you opened up this doorway for communication to happen between people that wanted to, love each other and help each other, but had no way to communicate it. And I think that can't be put into words, Diana. That is transformational. So I love that for you. I love that. I doubt you even imagined opening up that store would bring something so beautiful.
It's not just cult story though. I mean, as I'm sitting here talking, listening to you, my mind is just being flooded with the stories. I still remember early on in one of my I was in 3 different locations over the 7.5 years. And I was in my very first location, pretty new to CBD. And I had a gentleman that was 89 that came in with his walker. I still remember there was like a long walk from my front door to the cash register. And he's the sweetest man. He would come in and share stories about his wife that had just recently passed away, and talked about his pain that he was experiencing. And he's like, I'm gonna give this CBD thing a shot. I've been kind of hearing about it and reading about it on the news. And so I provided some education. And the next time he came back, he was moving a little faster. And the next time he came back, he was moving a little faster. And within about 3 months, he went from using a walker to using a cane. He would walk in with his cane, and probably within another couple of months, it really wasn't that long, that he came in without a cane at all.
Wow.
And he was nearly in tears talking about the difference in the way he feels when he wakes up in the morning. Throughout his day, he's more active. He feels great. And y'all, he only added a CBD capsule. That's it. It was so simple. And the CBD capsules at the time literally had 2 ingredients, a carrier oil and CBD. So that's it. I mean, there's no other explanation for it other than that. And he, so it's stories like his that, oh my gosh, my heart, I can just remember the feelings that I felt when he came in without a walker or cane.
Wow. And so I'm curious, okay, we talked about the kids, the pain of this, elder. What other symptoms did you hear all the time, like day after day? Because I mean, you had this store for so many years. What was like the common thread, or was there not one? You tell me.
Sleep.
Mm.
Yeah, mostly sleep. Again, it does make me wonder how many of those people truly, and you and I know that it's all connected, but was it more just a nervous system problem and not necessarily a hormonal problem or blood sugar problem or whatever? That may have played into it some, but how much of it was just that their body was able to relax inside itself and not be in fight or flight all the time? And so I would say sleep, because of a lot of it had to do with nervous system. Pain and sleep, those are probably the 2 most common things.
Wow. I mean, I agree with you, because the nervous system, for you guys listening, is, I like to say, it's how we perceive the world around us. Like, and so if these people, gosh, are stuck in this, like, think of maybe like a defensive mode, right? Or like just in hiding, you know what I mean? From past traumas, whatever it may be, no matter what you do with them, you can't heal them, right? If they're stuck in that old pattern. And so, okay, I have to imagine, because I'm like even overwhelmed. And Dinah, I've known you for years now, but I'm like, this story is amazing. And so if it's doing this to me right now, just listening to it, how has this store changed you? Because it didn't sound like you went into it thinking this was going to happen. And now from what I'm hearing is, I mean, you're tapping into something deeper than just symptoms. You're tapping into people's nervous system, and you're changing literally how they're walking around in the world. So like, how has this changed you?
Ooh, it makes me emotional. I told you that I've cried like multiple times thinking about this episode. It's been it was so purposeful. It was when I walked into the door every morning to open the store, and somebody came in, they came in on purpose. They either came in for questions, they came in because it was working already. And so, I mean, what more purpose could you ever feel for these people to feel better than they've ever felt before in their life? And And it's not because it's just because I was providing education and just again almost as kind of a listening ear for them and helping them navigate through all the different products. And they begin to trust me and my judgment. And of course I know I didn't have it perfectly. I know not every single person was like Colt or like this gentleman, and there's different reasons for that, but for the most part, most people did notice a benefit from that. And so it began to become even a bigger challenge for me to start to connect these dots for these people. Like, okay, so if this worked, like what else can we do to get you even closer to optimal? And so that's when I really began to kind of pull all of these different pieces together. And you were a piece of that. Even though we weren't working as Gut Girls in that capacity at that point, my customers were craving more too. Like, hey, how can we pull in this gut health piece? And so you and I kind of figured out how we could work with those customers, together, even though you lived in Texas at the time. And so it was connecting the dots and providing different resources and things for people and just, again, just kind of loving on them. So it was some of the most special times for me in my life, honestly, over those last 7.5 years.
I can't imagine, because it sounds like you went from the investment business and it was just something you were doing, right? Like kind of walking through the process, like it's a job and it's supporting my family, to this storefront. But it sounds like it changed your identity, if I'm hearing this right, because you started to become like a coach or like a teacher. Like, do you see that too? Like, have you thought of, like, it completely had to shift your identity, right?
Yeah, I think people did look, did look to me for like, hey, if Diana's done it, I can do it too. And I wanted to be the one to provide them that encouragement. Like, hey, listen, I don't have this figured out. I don't have a medical degree. I don't have this perfectly, but I'm going to figure it out. And I will be here to listen along the way, in your journey. And if you want to bounce ideas off of me, or like, hey, what do you think about this supplement? Or what do you think about this diet? Or, whatever. I wanted to be that person that, would be there for them.
Yeah, it's a very Christ-like walk, I will say, because it sounds like I've always been told, like, as you walk your journey with Christ, that people will look at you and be like, there's something different about you. And I'm curious, I want to know more. And it sounds like that's what the town of Tullahoma was doing. They were like, there's something different about Diana these days, and they wanted to know more about it. And so I'm so glad that you took that opportunity to love on them and share, and just build up this trust, and this different way of living. I'm so proud of, like, I am so deeply proud of you. And then I've got to be so honest and not like even my whole body just got the chills to shift too. We're talking about this beautiful thing, but then something recently just changed. And that's really the point of this episode, is to tell people like what changed it, because I'm going to jump to like the real life of this. You had to shut this beautiful thing down. And so I guess let me start with the question of like, when did you first realize like something was changing and it had to be addressed, and it was going to determine the future of your store?
Well, this is going to be kind of a long answer, but I want the listeners to understand that when the Farm Bill passed in 2018, it was kind of like, okay, so CBD with 0.3% of THC, and the majority had to be cannabidiol, which is CBD. And so this is what the regulations were. This is what the product had to be. And over the last 6.5, 7 years, prior to what happened earlier this spring, was a lot of uncertainty behind the laws. And there were different times over those years that, like at one point there's Delta 8, which is a more synthetic version that people were honestly almost able to create in a lab, sort of, to give you that same kind of feeling of, pain relief or whatever, but more so than CBD. And at one point, the state of Tennessee shut that part down. So like you couldn't do Delta 8, which that wasn't any problem for me because I knew that Delta 9 was the more naturally extracted part of the hemp plant. And so I was able to shift kind of into that just fine. And then there were these new laws and regulations that are not laws, but these new rules that would pop up from like the Tennessee Department of Revenue, where they would contact us and say, you need to add on this 6% sales tax. And so some people in my industry began to add on this 6% sales tax to their customers. Well, me, I'm like, I'm going to research this and understand, is this actual law or what is that? Well, come to find out, it really was never signed into law. And so there are actually lawsuits sitting out there now because people like me, that were retailers that were buying things as wholesale, turn around and selling it as retail. There were people just like me that they were charging that 6% sales tax. Well, I never did it because I was like, and so it just kind of, that part of it just kind of died. So the Delta 8 went away, that part died. So there was always sort of this uncertainty behind like what the laws are. And Tennessee has always been able to try to find a way to regulate it. And so a couple of I guess last year we started to learn a little bit more about how the Tennessee Department of Agriculture was beginning to take over that part of CBD, and they were going to begin to regulate it. And so they were working with Tennessee Department of Revenue. And then they actually ended up at the beginning of the year turning it over to TABC, which is the Alcoholic Beverage Commission for Tennessee. And so they actually turned it over to them and then said, okay, you guys go out, and just like people have to get a liquor license, we're going to make you get a CBD license or a hemp license. Again, there was so much uncertainty behind what was actually happening. And so in this industry, I had kind of learned like, it's almost just like a wait and kind of see what happens, like, and see. And so that's what I did. And then I guess it must have been some part of early April, something like that, maybe end of March, early April. I had a lady that came in an unmarked car. She came in and flashed this badge at me like she was the FBI. And I was
gosh.
And I was like, oh my, like, what are we doing here? She started looking at all of my CBD products. She asked me if I carry some CBD products. I kind of explained to her what they are, the difference between them. And unfortunately, this lady was not educated at all about the products. And so she started trying to look at the back of the bottles and understand which ones might fall in what the new TABC rules are. And honestly, I laugh because I'm like, bless her sweet little heart, she had no idea what she was doing.
Wow.
And so she knew that she had a job to come in and begin to regulate some of the products that I was carrying, but she didn't know the difference between any of them. And so that's when I was like, okay, they're actually sending people out and kind of giving them warnings that they need to go get a license, a hemp license. And so I started researching it, of course, that night. And I was like, okay, so I have to get this hemp license. I'm going to read through all the rules and understand it, and read through the liquor law rules, and, and familiarize myself with all of that. And so once I really started diving in, I'm like, okay, this truly has passed as law. And so now they're going to begin implementing it over this time. And by June 30th is the cutoff. So like I don't know honestly, I'm not sure if they were going to start truly going to arrest people and seize product and stuff like that. But June 30th was the cutoff for that. So I knew that I had to do something quickly and start applying for this license.
So that you applying for this license, you still didn't think that the store might close, or did you? Okay.
So basically, what I stopped doing at the time, because the lady was unable to give me any indication of which products I can and can't sell because she didn't understand the difference in all the products. So I stopped selling them. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to apply for this license. I'm going to stop selling these products. And with my store, and we'll get into like the financial side of it at one point, but you crunch numbers and you know what your revenues are based on the different categories of products and things that you carry, and you stop selling one when you already run a somewhat tight budget just to keep the lights on and employ all of your teammates and everything, and you're like going, oh man, like this can't happen for long. And so I was like constantly following up with the Tennessee, I guess it would be with TABC. I kept constantly emailing them and say, hey, where are we in my process? Because this licensure, you guys, I mean, I spent so much money that I'll never get back. Not to mention the time that I had to go get a background check and fingerprinted. Todd had to go get a background check and fingerprinted because he also is part owner. And so both owners had to do that. I mean, I had to map out how close I was to the closest school, which is 968 feet, if anybody's curious. I did paperwork. I uploaded stuff to the site. I mean, you guys, I spent hours and hours and I mean, literally could easily have been 50 hours that I spent trying to like go through this process.
So you fought for it, essentially, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I fought, and honestly, as our customers would come in, we put a sign up that said, we're in the process of getting a hemp license. I mean, I did everything. As far as I can tell, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I took the stuff off the shelf. I stopped selling it until I actually got the license. And I said, once we received the license, we'll be back selling these again. We had a list of people's names and phone numbers on there, and we were going to begin to call all of these people. And so week after week after week went on. And then I got an email that was like, I'm sorry, the way you conduct your business, we're not going to approve your license.
Oh, wow. So you did everything that you were asked, but was there like, I'm just curious, I don't know if you can share, was there like a deeper explanation to that, or that was it?
There was. So, and this is where people are going to really finally understand kind of what happened. So they told me that they would never, that the premises, 105 West Deckard Street in Tullahoma, had to be 21 and up establishment. There's no children allowed whatsoever. If I wanted to sell CBD again. And again, remind you, now we did have some products that were stronger than what Colt was taking, but I mean, this is the product that Colt was taking, that no children could be on my premises whatsoever. And of course, I mean, you guys, we always had somebody in the front. I mean, we knew almost every single person that walked in our door. We had them in our system, like it was a very personal situation when people came into Nature's Elite. And so when we stopped selling it, it was painful. I mean, I began to feel the sales immediately. And so as those weeks went on, and they said that I couldn't allow anybody 21 and older. So I fired back almost immediately when I got back that email to this attorney for the state of Tennessee. And I'm like, okay, I need some more explanation about the age 21 and up, because nobody comes in my store, no child comes in my store without being accompanied by an adult. And he said, nope, you still can't do that. Well, so then of course I looked in even further to the liquor license, because Angela, if you wanted to go in the state of Tennessee, if you wanted to go into a liquor store and buy a bottle of wine, you would be able to take your two small children with you. You would need to have them by hand, have them right there by you, but you could take them into that store. Well, he fired back yet again. And I mean, these are emails going back and forth, and I'm waiting days in between these responses. And so again, every day was feeling more and more painful as far as sales were concerned. And so he fired back again and said, this is not how this works with the hemp laws. And you guys, this is, I don't want to get into politics and all of those things, but some of the people that are some of our lawmakers in Tennessee are very much intertwined in the pharmaceutical industry. And in my head, I'm not telling you that I know this for a fact, even though there are rumors that what I believe is true. But the fact that people were getting off of some of their pharmaceutical medications for sleep, for pain, for anxiety, they were getting off of those medications, and it was truly hurting the bottom line. Again, this may be controversial, and I may hear this from people, but that's what I believe is happening, and it's clear because they're looking for ways to regulate it. Now, were they probably looking for ways to regulate it to keep people safe as well? Sure, absolutely, and I think that would be absolutely a goal of theirs. But you hurt people like me that were doing it the right way, that were doing quality products, that were explaining how to take these products. And so when they fire back and say, Angela, you would never be allowed in my store. And that also means that my children are not 21. They're teenagers, but they're not 21. They would not be allowed on my premises. And so, you guys, when you have somebody that takes away the whole way that you do your store, where it's a family-friendly location, where they pull into our little gravel parking lot and they walk in the door with their family, and a lot of times it was kids that the parents would want me to even talk to their children about how they feel. And, and so when you take away that side of it, I couldn't see how I could continue business on as is. And so people do continue to ask the questions about well, why could you not just sell one thing or sell the other thing? Again, once you start crunching those numbers, guys, and you've already gone weeks without it, what your numbers are, and it was not sustainable at that point.
Wow. That's all I can say. There's so many emotions that I hear. There's grief, but then there's anger. There's just injustice. There's all the things you hear in that to process. And so there's two thoughts, and we'll get to both. One, I can only imagine what was happening in your own body. And I want to talk about that. But first, I want to say what's interesting is you knew what it really took for people to get better, right? That's the difference. Yeah, I could maybe just sell, if I wanted to make it 21 and older and just sell the one product that would maybe give you enough finances to keep it afloat, even if that was an option. But what I'm hearing is you were but that's not what brought people healing. That wasn't even it. It's not just the CBD. It was, they came here with their family. It was a place that they trusted. They got to come in and talk and share the grief and the heartache that they were going through in their life. And you're going to take that away. And you knew probably in your gut that then people aren't going to get better, because it wasn't, we know this in the Gut Girls, it's not just a supplement that heals people, right? So it sounds like you fought for that. It sounds like you grew in this journey yourself of no, I know what real healing requires. And I was doing all the things that were needed to help that in my community. And now you just strip me of it and you want me to look a certain way. And it's just not how it's going to be. Because, you grew, the store changed you too, and how you conducted, coaching and teaching and loving on people. And so I think that's powerful. One, just to say wow, Diana, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage and bravery. And so again, I just see so much growth in you as a human being. But then I have to go back to what were you feeling in those days? I know you said pain. I kept hearing you say pain. And so I imagine you felt all of those emotions so much that this is typically what people come to us. They're like, I have pain, but they don't break down the injustice that they've been handed over, the grief, the wounds, you don't see me over here. Like, I felt like you're trying to fight for something and you're like, you don't even see me over here. But you kept saying pain. Like, that's, to me, it's like, it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, all that was underneath the pain of your, not just finances, but like, I bet your body felt that pain, correct?
It was truly some of the hardest weeks of my life. When I was going through it, and I even kind of told Todd, and I think I told you too, that the pain and the grief that I felt was not, it sounds, people are going to think this sounds crazy, but it was not that dissimilar to what I felt like when I was watching my mom die. She was on hospice care, and you have all of these emotions like, okay, just let her go ahead and go be with Jesus, but then no, don't take her away because then she dies. And so you literally wrestle with yourself, like, because you don't want her to be in pain. You don't, and so the grieving, and then obviously like the loss and whatever, but that feeling of how that was happening was almost the same as what happened during that time. Like, because I felt this immediate, it just pulled away from me and it was out of my hands. I don't do well when things are out of my control. Because I generally have a plan. I stick to the plan. I massage the plan. And when somebody pulls that rug out from under you, it is, I felt the pain, the sadness, the grief, the worry. My goodness. And I still feel it, even though I have a smile on my face. I still feel that very much. It's tough. When it's something that you've built from the ground up and then it just gets taken away, without you being able to really do anything about it. It was tough, really tough.
And this is like very personal, but what did you, if you could kind of reflect back, what did your family see during those, maybe it was weeks, months, that you really maybe weren't able to share with your customers at the time?
They saw a lot of tears. They saw the stress. They saw, the emails that I was having to do, the process of just having to almost put the pain and the sadness aside to be like, okay, now I have to actually make this happen. I have to make the shutdown happen now. And so then you're back to like, you put a smile on your face to shut down your dream, And so it was tough, and they've been a part of it, and they've seen the growth and they've seen the changes, and they've been through the hard days, they've been through the good days with us. They have done everything. And my gosh, Todd, sorry. We go for a walk almost every night after dinner. I was like, and I kind of giggled when I said it, but I was like, it's okay if you hate me. And he was like, what do you need? And I was like, the time and the money and the energy that he's put into this. And so, and it wasn't his dream. It was his dream because it was my dream. And he's the most supportive, amazing human on the planet. And so, it got taken away from him too, And so that was so so hard to know that, you know, we're over there working in the weeds at the building and, you know, making a new consult room. And my gosh, we rearranged that building 7,000 times. So he's painting on a Saturday morning at 5 a.m., you know, listening to his podcast. And he'd wake up before all of us so that he could go get it done before we had to go basketball games all day or whatever. Like so my heart was almost like for him as much as it was for myself and the community. It was tough.
You are a beautiful human to, I mean, take in not just your pain in that moment, but your family's pain. Like, I'm sure that was tough for you. And did you question your identity at all? I'm curious, like during that time?
Because I had felt like, I mean, a lot of times people are like, you should change Nature's Elite the name to just Diana's store. And so because they're like, that's what we call it anyways. I'm over here at Diana's, you know?
Yeah.
And so it became kind of my identity a little bit, you know, like people, I hope that they knew me as somebody they could come and talk to, that they could trust, that they could bounce ideas off of, that they, you know, if they had a problem, that I could help them figure out a way to solve that problem. And so it was Diana, go by and see Diana, you know? And so it felt like that was my purpose, and it became my passion to be there and be available for those people to because I wanted to care for them and love on them.
Mm-hmm. Knowing your heart, I do want to ask, like, what was that season like? And I know it's still so fresh, but like spiritually for you, what was that like?
Every Sunday I would go to church and bawl my eyes out, usually during the service. But it was interesting how God spoke through the pastor a lot of times. And right around the time that the store officially closed, I think it was the next Sunday, he was talking about the peace that passes all understanding. And that was one thing that I kept telling you, I kept telling Todd, and then my best friend Diane. I just was like, even though this has been the crappiest situation, there's like still this peace and this hope. And I know that can only be of God. And so he's got me through this. I know he will not let me go, because, you know, you and I have kind of talked about it, where I do feel like through all the steps and changes over the last 8 years that God has provided these doors that he opens and then he closes, and then he opens and then he closes. And he has given me a peace and a hope through all of that, that I just knew that it was the thing that needed to be done, even though it was really hard. I knew that he was telling me it's time to let it go. This is it.
Mm. You know, I'm going to share something, and I said this to you in the midst, I think, of everything that was going on. I don't know that you remember, but guys, Diana has such a big heart to help people. And so you guys know that now, we'll get into this because we're actually going to do a part 2, because this is so much to take in. But, you know, Diana and I started the Gut Girls in the midst of you being at Nature's Elite. We started the Gut Girls. And this business was mainly because Diana felt that Nature's Elite was not big enough. Like, people need help beyond just Tullahoma. And so how do we go bigger? And so that's when we started the Gut Girls. But I remember saying to you, there were so many days we worked together and you would have to go to the store, you know, like you loved being there for people. That was never it. It was kind of the back end of like, I have to do inventory. I've got to get, you know, the logistics of running a store done. And that would sometimes take away from what we needed to get done at Nature's Elite, or not Nature's Elite, Gut Girls. And so I remember you saying like, I'm ready to go all in on Gut Girls at some point. Like, I'm just feeling this tug. I'm ready. I think that it would help more people. And, you know, sometimes you see these dreams and you just talk about them and, you know, like, and you maybe vision them, but then you don't know what that's going to look like logistically. And it was interesting because as you're feeling that peace, I remember feeling it for you in a sense of like, you asked for this, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that in any way, like, you know what I mean? But like, you knew, like, it was instinctively, like, you know, God was kind of speaking through it. Like, you knew you had to get bigger. You were doing so much in that community, but still people need you outside of that. And so it was like, it was almost this beautiful thing when you say you felt the peace that surpassed all understanding. I almost felt it for you being, a co-owner with you of Gut Girls, of like, yeah, there's more to this mission. And so then I want to come back and ask you, like, was there a moment that you realized maybe Nature's Elite wasn't the mission after all? And I just want you to speak on that for a second.
I don't know. I don't know if there was an exact moment, but I definitely having that piece that like I knew that it was time to shut this down. Because just like you said, if you guys listening have ever run a business, you never ever are closed. It may say that the sign is closed on the door, but that a lot of times means that's when I'm working overtime. And I would go to sleep thinking about it. I would sometimes think about it during the night. I would wake up and immediately think about it, worry about it. Wanted to make sure that my teammates, I try not, I don't like to call them my employees because they were my team. They were my rock. I wanted to make sure that my teammates were taken care of and loved. And I wanted to make sure that everything, I don't even know how to put it into words. Like I wanted to make sure that gosh, ask me again. What did we say? My mind is going so many different directions.
Yeah. Well,
take me back to where you went.
Yeah, just knowing that like Nature's Elite probably wasn't the ultimate destination for you.
So a lot of the customers that I had grown to really like know and love and whatever, a lot of them wanted to start understanding more of a deeper root of like what's going on. And just like you talked about earlier, where it's not necessarily one supplement that's going to just heal you. There's so much more. It takes so much more. There's the foundational work that it takes. Just like with Colt, do I think CBD would have made just a difference with just doing that part? Sure. I do think it would have made a difference, but Woody made such great progress without his mom really like diving into, looking at how much gluten he's intaking. Is he having, dyes in his foods and stuff like that? And so it takes all of that. And so as I began to kind of shift into just them walking in the door and saying, hey, help me find like a good vitamin D or a good B vitamin or whatever, it began to come into deeper conversation where they really wanted more. And so, like you said, it was kind of already integrated with Gut Girls. And so some of those people began to shift into Gut Girls anyway. And so that's when I started to understand that with Gut Girls, I can do both. It's not a storefront where they come see me face to face, but we can do the GI map test, which obviously is the tool that you and I believe is what helped with my transformation, what helped with other people's transformation. But the other part, and I don't want to get too much into Gut Girls, I wanted to work with you and find a way that we can work with those people that just need a place to start. And so that's why I became so passionate about what we call it our self-starter membership level, because I want those people to have the resources and kind of everything that I gave them in Nature's Elite. We were already building in that self-starter and in with doing the GI map. And again, we'll kind of explain how everything works probably in part 2, but it was already molding into that and shaping into that anyways. And so I think with again, me not having a choice with the revenue shifts of losing the CBD, or, you know, can I do CBD only or do supplements only? People ask that all the time. And the answer is no. I mean, I want to make sure that's really clear that, I mean, this is super personal, and it comes down to numbers, guys. If you have ever run a business, it comes down to numbers. Can you do it? And the answer is no. And you also have to factor in your time, right? Because again, I was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when you put all that together, the answer was no, but your new mission is already laid out for you. And so I want to literally thank God right here in front of all of our listeners that he's already laid that foundation for me. And just like when you come into the store, if you do it for 1 month, are you going to like have this major transformation? Maybe not, probably not, right? It takes time. It takes our healing and our health. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so now being able to use Gut Girls even more than what I was able to provide in Nature's Elite, where it was just like a quick come in and come out, or, you know, whatever. I mean, obviously I would spend time with them, but you know, it's more than that. It's where you have the community support and everything. And so where God has just laid that out for me, he was already doing it. It was already there. And so the fact that, and where you and I kind of are and our members, any of our members listening can probably see that happening, because they're a part of the membership already. And so they're like, yeah, Diana, you've already continued to build that community. And what's so cool is that community is outside of Tullahoma now. It's nationwide. We have people in, you know, Texas and Ohio and Tennessee and Virginia and Florida. And I mean, we truly have people everywhere. And man, I mean, how cool that God has allowed that new space for me to not have to have the worry of the storefront all the time, and to be able to kind of shift into this Gut Girls that has already been forming for so many years.
Yeah, it's beautiful, because when I think about you, when you were tearing up and you were talking about you and Todd walking, and, you know, just like, gosh, Todd, do you hate me? And, you know, but I mean, I think of that moment, because it was like, you're going through that emotion, but then it's like in that moment, just to look at you in the tears and the, you know, the worry of everyone else, and say, okay, but Nature's Elite, Diana, it was just preparing you for the dream. You know, so as you're trying to make sure everyone around you is feeling better in this, you know, moment, and they're being held, it's like they are, because you're still dreaming. And that dream is actually being laid out into, you know, tangible memberships, action steps for people, like you said, in all 50 states. And so I just wanted to speak to that Diana on that walk, to be like, you're in tears and I feel the pain, but like, you are dreaming still, and Todd's support and your family's support and the community of Tullahoma, their support is allowing you to launch like the next thing. And so this is where I just want to say, like, okay, guys, so we're going to kind of stop here, because there's this other side of this that we want to jump into. And we know that, you know, you guys are probably listening on your drive to work or picking up the kids. And so what we're going to dive in next week is, we're not stopping here, because there's this other side to Diana. It's almost like, I say, it's like her second transformation. She had her first transformation leaving, well, you guys just heard it, leaving the investment world, opening up Nature's Elite, becoming a teacher, a coach, just loving on her community. And then she had to shut that down. And next week, we're going to talk about what happened after Nature's Elite. You heard a little bit of it just here at the end, but we're going to talk about Gut Girls a little bit more in depth, and kind of like, we're going to talk about the mission that Diana really feels like she was truly called for, but like what her identity in that. You know what I mean? Like, you went from the storefront owner, Diana Store, there's no longer a Diana Store, but what are people now going to be calling it? And, where are people going to be going to get the same healing and the same love and community feel? And so, guys, we're going to stop here, but be sure to join us next week for the next episode. We'll say it's part 2 of, what happened after Nature's Elite, and we can't wait to fill you in on that.
The Gut Girls podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. We are not acting as licensed medical professionals. Always consult your doctor before making any changes to your health routine.